Dungeons of the Oak Dell is an upcoming Kickstarter project by Two Acorns Games. It is the spiritual successor to Villagers of the Oak Dell, a game about building your own bucolic burrow and populating it with villagers while taking advantage of titillating combo possibilities. In fact, for those of you who backed and received Villagers of the Oak Dell, you'll likely recognize this dice rondel sheet, which is making a reappearance of sorts in this, its leather-clad, monster-mashing counterpart. But what is Dungeons of the Oak Dell? What kind of experience can you expect to have with it? And perhaps most importantly, does it offer anything new to the increasingly crowded genre most of us know as roll and write? Let's put on our board game spectacles and take a look. Oh, these are actually like sticking corkscrews into my eyes. Ow. But before I get into that, I need to tell you that this is a preview video. It's not intended to be a full-on review of the title. This statement represents me laying aside the ponderous bulk of my review hammer, which is very difficult for me to do because we all know there's nothing I love more than beating up games with my review hammer, in favor of focusing my efforts entirely on communicating to you what exactly Dungeons of the Oak Dell is, so when its Kickstarter campaign goes live, you'll have a good idea as to whether or not it's something you'd want to invest in and add to your collection. And now, with that disclaimer lingering in the air like the scent of the toast I burned this morning, on to the dungeons. In Dungeons of the Oak Dell, you and up to 3 other adventurers will each delve into a dungeon packed to the gills with viscous villains and tinkly-winkly treasure. And your goal is for everyone to accomplish the dungeon's unique objective before 8 rounds have elapsed. Each round begins with someone rolling a handful of dice and distributing them around this wheel, placing them according to their color and results. Then, you and your friends each take turns by picking one of these dice and performing the actions attached to them. These actions allow you to roam the dark, dripping, fetid halls of the dungeon, which is how you add tinkly-winkly treasures to your inventory most of the time. Inflict wounds on monsters you're fighting, which is done using a mechanic that is just cool. I don't care if this is a preview and not a review. I have to mention the way you hit monsters is pretty darn cool. And finally, these actions will allow monsters to deal damage back to you, which is not nearly as cool because that can make you deceased. You'll continue drafting dice until all players have drafted 3, then start the process over again with a new round. It's all pretty simple, familiar stuff. What makes Dungeons of the Oak Dell unique is its take on combat, which, as I said, is pretty cool. Every monster in the dungeon is surrounded with a smattering of icons, kind of like electrons around the nucleus of an atom. Every time you hit a monster, you'll be given one of these icons and you'll have to select a matching icon around the monster. Once you've selected your icon, you'll grab a ruler and draw a line from that selected icon to another, connecting the two. If your line cuts through one of the objects floating on the monster, you immediately get a bonus, which could be a key to open a door, an improvement to one of your skills, or the opportunity to strike another blow. If your line intersects with any other lines you've drawn, you'll deal damage to the monster equal to the number of lines you succeeded in drawing through. It's the kind of utterly unique mechanic Dungeons of the Oak Dell can get away with, in part because it is a print-and-play game. Backing the Kickstarter means you are buying a variety of content that will arrive to you in a series of downloadable files. At a very affordable price, the game's like 12 euros, which you can then use to print off beautiful components of your own. Or if you're like me and you don't have access to a color printer, you can create components that are functional but uglier than a pirate's toenails, doing a terrible disservice to the art, which happens to be quirky and full of character. So for a little bit of extra money and time, you could make your monster sheets vibrant, full of color, dry erase, and pristine, or just print up new ones every time you go to play. Whatever works for you. By the way, I will note that the game is 99.8% playable in black and white. The only element of it affected by that lack of color is the potions, which have the same visual designs but are different colors, and the function of the potions will change depending on the color they happen to be. When I found this out after printing off my components, I had to pull up the digital versions of the dungeons and reference those as I was working my way through the dungeons to make sure I was getting the right potions. Black and white works well if you're not too worried about frills and you're just looking to play the game, but not without the slightest bit of extra effort. Should you and I be in the same sorry little boat when it comes to printers. Never fear. Two Acorns Games has stated that they will make available access to professionally printed versions of the components in one of the tiers of their Kickstarter campaign. So if you want to order up some glossy, colorful, affordable bits and nubs, you'll be able to get them without all the DIY. That is the preview. From what I've seen of it, Dungeons of the Oak Dell offers a punchy experience of dungeon busting and bad guy bashing that features a nifty combat system. If what you've seen in this video interests you, I've included a link to the Kickstarter campaign page in the comments. Check that out. It goes live September 17th. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.